So I don't know that I'm driving at anything intentional
Okay.
so much as what I'm looking for in having these conversations, podcast conversations, is just kind of an organic conversation. I'm not. I'm able to fake very well or for a long period
Okay.
of time an interest in somebody, so they have to naturally already just be of kind of some interest to me.
Okay, that's fair.
There have been a number of people that are like, "Hey, I want to get on your podcast." And it's like, well, that's not really the way that it works. I'll let you know. I mean, do something
Yeah.
interesting, I suppose. Be of interest. I don't know how to say
Be
that.
of interest to me or else.
But yeah, there's a lot of people that I find super interesting that are in and around this community,
Uh-huh.
and they're really some spectacular people. I think you have a really cool and interesting artistic approach to music.
Thank you.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. I like the way that you play. I like the way that you approach songwriting. Plus, every time I talk to you, somehow something interesting comes out. Like I had no idea
Okay.
that you could produce a television show. Really?
Kind of.
Sort
Yeah.
of.
I got more into originally I wanted to be in like film and stuff, but then when I was in college, that I like studied film in college, but like my first year I got into songwriting that I always liked writing. So like in school I focused more on like screenwriting, but I like slowly started to form like my own idea of songwriting because I felt like as a songwriter you have like more freedom of like what you want to say, where I felt like sometimes like with acting in film and all that, you kind of had to be in a production or have a script or a character. Or like depending where you are, you might not have like the same resources that like if you're your own writer, then you can just write your own stories per se.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I
Yeah.
suppose that's the fundamental nature of it, though. But you have to have
Yeah.
something to say
Yeah, exactly.
and be good at either good at communicating
Yeah.
or have an interest in figuring out how to communicate specific things and ideas with specific people, right?
Yeah.
Because like if you don't have a direction but you have an idea,
Yeah.
if you're naturally curious,
Uh-huh.
you think, well, who might this be interesting to?
Exactly.
One, and two, how do I communicate this idea to that person?
Yeah.
A documentary filmmaker will do it using video and some overdub lines.
Yeah.
A filmmaker will use like actors and situations.
Yeah.
A songwriter, words and melody, like tune.
Uh-huh. Exactly.
Do you so? Which would you? We have plenty of time.
Yeah.
Do you have one that you show more of an inclination towards? I think it would be songwriting, right?
Yeah.
Not so much the video side.
Yeah, I think songwriting, like the reason I gravitated towards that more is that I always liked, I guess, like poetry as a kid.
Same.
That my family's originally from Venezuela, so I always heard that Shakira, like her first album was more, I guess, rock inspired and more lyrical than it is now.
Oh, interesting.
But yeah, my mom always told me that like one of the things that helps her with songwriting is that one, she loved poetry, and two, because especially later on with being bilingual, you can use certain metaphors that like people wouldn't normally think about because like anybody that learns a second language knows that like you can't directly translate a phrase. Like usually with most languages you have to figure out a way to reword it. Like there's certain phrases that would make sense in Spanish that wouldn't in English.
Yeah.
And so you can use like interesting metaphors that people wouldn't normally think about in English.
Yeah. And that's
Yeah.
why like comedians have to really, it's not just speaking
Yeah.
the language.
Uh-huh.
The way that you tell jokes and the cadences that you use and
Yeah.
the things that you talk about are so different
Yeah.
in Latin American countries, like or in Latin countries, not American. Being a
Yeah.
Latin American person, I'm coming from the
Yeah.
reference of like there's a handful of comedians that I follow that I
Yeah.
really like that while being bilingual
Yeah.
and having family from these other places,
Yeah.
when they go tell like jokes to their cousins and stuff, their cousins are like, they're
Yeah.
sitting looking at them waiting for something to be funny. And they're like, I just said something really funny.
Yeah.
It's like, well, but you didn't even finish the thought yet. Like,
Yeah.
like there's that weird context thing that doesn't fully translate, that
Yeah.
you have to be from that place in order
Yeah.
to write in a way that it's kind of funny.
Yeah.
Do you think songwriting has some of that to it?
I think so. I think there's like, I guess kind of like how today's time, like social media, you're able to see more perspectives. Like you were saying with like some comedians. I think his name's Marcelo. He's on SNL now, but he talks a lot about, or a lot of his jokes are about like certain experiences with like Latin American immigrants and stuff like that, where I feel like a few years ago would have been harder for like people here to understand that or see that as much as like maybe just the American or typical American perspective.
Yeah.
So I think that similarly, like with songwriting, I feel like it gives people like an avenue to tell their own stories that might not like be publicly told already. And like because you don't need like a huge production to always do that, you can sometimes like if you don't have the same resources as somebody with like a big team, you can go to like an open mic or something like that and share your story.
True.
Yeah.
True. Yeah. And that comes from community
Yeah.
build.
Yeah.
If there isn't a community that's built, you either need to be the one that builds it,
Yeah.
or move to a place that
Yeah.
values that, takes care of that.
Yeah.
I mean, we're super fortunate in this area that there are a lot
Yeah.
of shoulders that we're standing on that have laid
Yeah.
groundwork and foundations for days, and it's just
Yeah.
a matter of who's going to pick it up and run with it now. So we do have a lot of open mics. You know, we do have a lot of shows, and not enough. We are in dire need of more stages.
Yeah.
COVID wrecked a number of those locations. But we were talking before we got going about Blue Mermaid,
Yeah.
and how places like the Mermaid that really do value the arts community, the music community specifically, like the fact that they carve out a place within their business model to support musicians,
Yeah.
it doesn't go overlooked. No, I'm not with me anyway. I mean, I'm sure not with you either, because you know you're pretty perceptive, and you don't look at it like the venue owes you the time. I've seen you at a lot of open mics, and you don't seem to have any issue walking in unknown and being like, "This is who I am. This is what I do. I will earn my place, and you will see my merit." And a lot of places don't really. They get bombarded.
Yeah.
Like we were talking about the press room, and how forever it didn't. It's not that it was nepotistic. It's that they get inundated so heavily with show requests. When the person running it really needs to not only want to be there for local music,
Yeah.
they need to know how to work with people who think that they're the gatekeeper of gatekeepers.
Okay.
You know, like if you don't have a built-in crowd
Yeah.
where every night you know there are going to be anywhere from 60 to 120 people who are looking for something to do, and you could catch those people. Like 15 great venues in an area, all of them are going to get 60 to 120. Nobody's competing with each other. They can focus on their niche. You bring in a national, you bring in a local or two for support.
Yeah.
You tie up your shows that way. Whereas if you don't have that, which we don't have that, this is, I suppose if the community was like really, really dying for interaction live and in person, which they will be soon, I think. That shift away from social media and complete detachment from people, I think, is starting to really shift. But if you don't have that because you're not, say, Austin, Texas or New York, you have to have a really good reason why people are coming. And if you're completely unknown and you don't know how to market a show yet, and they take a chance on you and you bring nobody, that's a huge problem. So I can imagine how a place like the Press Room, when Tristan was running it, he was getting so many messages from local bands, from just outside the region bands, from nationals, from like just every different angle. Doing right by everybody is impossible. So how do you do right by so many that you're perceived
Yeah.
as good to the locals?
Yeah.
I think Blue Mermaid has figured out a way to do it. They're not your typical traditional venue, but
Yeah.
all of the people that have been here forever, the musicians anyway, they know who the Mermaid is. Those people are all about supporting musicians and finding a way to put them in, you know, which no business has to.
Yeah. Like we were talking about before, just that they have like a photographer. I don't know if it's somebody who works there, but like just having that avenue where like taking pictures of people who are just performing at an open mic that they're not even paying the performers to be there, like just giving them, because it's for a resource also for the performers because they're getting their picture taken. And then like it's kind of, I don't know, I feel like it's an added bonus that they're doing for an open mic that they don't have to be doing that because they're not getting like I guess like people in like they would for a show or something like that.
I see a
Yeah.
couple of ways there. If there aren't people,
Yeah.
you're not going to draw in a lot of open micers.
Yeah.
So you may as well just do something else. If you want to have a good open mic, you need to show that there are people there.
Yeah.
You need to show that there's a variety of performers there. So in taking pictures and putting them up,
Yeah.
I don't subscribe necessarily to the it's good exposure, because you can have anybody take a picture of you with a phone and you're standing
Yeah.
in front of a microphone with a guitar and you're like really singing your heart out, and then post it online and be like, hey, I just did a show. Like, check me out. And then just not say where it was. And most
Yeah.
people aren't going to stop and be like, yeah, okay. What's the name of the place, or I don't believe you. So it's there. The Mermaid is kind of making out by doing what they should be doing.
Oh no, I meant
So
it
to
like
me-
a good thing that like it's
Great
nice. They're giving like an extra step, I guess, to like an open mic because usually most places or most bars that would be like look similar to the Blue Mermaid if people weren't familiar with like the music scene there, they wouldn't put that extra effort to like have someone taking pictures.
Yeah, a lot of
Yeah,
them
yeah.
don't.
Yeah.
Totally, I agree. I talk about this a lot. There's
Yeah.
a way to run an open mic whereby you turn the open mic into something really, really big, and most
Yeah.
don't do it right.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'll tell them over and over, this is how to do it. You do it like, and I'll lay it out, and all of it makes sense. All
Yeah,
of it
yeah.
works to support everything else, but you have to do all of it.
Yeah.
And one of the things is let people know that it's happening.
Yeah.
Take pictures, show. It's not just fear of missing out. There's a community here.
Yeah.
So if you can show and highlight that there's a community that you're missing out on or not being a part of, humans are naturally tribal. So
Yeah.
they want to find their tribe naturally. So if you show them, look, there's a tribe here,
Yeah.
you'll at least get people stopping through to see if those are their people.
Yeah.
You know? But really, to not have a drum set
Yeah.
means the best you're going to do is a quarter of the people that you could. And at best case scenario, you're going to do a quarter of the people that you otherwise would.
Yeah.
And you're going to limit yourself to almost entirely singer-songwriters and people who feel like going out and seeing a variety of singer-songwriters try out new material. So you like niche. You're like catching 3 and 4 different dimensions of niche.
Yeah.
So what most open mics do is they carve themselves out in an area, a total of like maybe 40 people that are going to be interested. And then
Yeah.
like we were talking about the sales and marketing thing,
Yeah.
50. Of those people that hear about what you're doing, 50% of them are going to be interested. Of those, 50% might actually show up.
Yeah.
Of those, 50% are going to get in their car, drive, and then get out. And it's just such a bad model. You have to have a drum set and a
Yeah.
back line, because if you ask a drummer, say, if you have a band, and you ask the drummer to go to the open mic with you and like play some of your band's songs, the question is there a drum set there? If the answer is
Yeah.
no, you just lost at least half.
Yeah.
You know, maybe
That's true.
some are going to bring the drum set, but if there's a drum set there and the answer is yeah, the drum's already there, and you just show up, you're going to get the drummer. If you get the guitar, vocal, and the drummer, you're most likely going to get the bass player.
Yeah.
If you get the bass player and the drummer, you're most likely also going to get the keyboard player or the second guitar player. So now instead of a singer-songwriter, you have 4 people. Also, if those people tell their friends who are in a different band, now you have 2 or 3 bands. So now you have like 8 times the number of people. As soon as you have multiple bands showing up, now you have area music fans and those bands' music fans and people that just want to see the whole thing go down. Because what ends up happening is you have like 4 or 5 singer-songwriters that kind of mix in,
Yeah.
3 or 4 different bands that'll get up and play, and then like 2 of the songwriters will be like, hey, I have this idea, grab that drummer and that bass player, and that now you've got new bands forming, and the place just packs. And then every week nobody wants to miss it. Now you just make another one, and now you make another one, and now you make another one. But if they all follow that same format, that's where the attendance really solidifies. But for some reason, I don't know that I want to do a drum set yet. Okay, man.
Yeah.
Enjoy your, sometimes
Yeah.
there's people there and sometimes there's not, open mic. Blue Mermaid has a backline, full backline, drum set, bass amp, guitar amp, everything is set up, sound checked, ready to go. I've been a couple of times. How many times have you been?
To the open mic they have now,
Yeah.
I've been once, the time I saw you guys there.
Okay.
And then I think I don't know if I met Nevin there for the first time, like years ago, but the second time I saw him at an open mic was at the Blue Mermaid, but like it was back when I was in college that I would sometimes go to open mics like the Stone Church when I was here
great
on
one.
break. And I went to the Blue Mermaid once when they had the open mic before the pandemic. It would have been like around 2019, 18.
Oh man.
Yeah, so it was back then.
18,
Yeah.
19, the scene was like,
Yeah,
it was just about back to this really epic kind of
yeah,
buzz. There was so much going on. You could see three shows in a night.
yeah,
It really was reminiscent of the 90s, when there were just like fistfuls of bands.
yeah,
And Tim McCoy pointed out really poignantly that there has never really been an off moment in this Seacoast community. There's always good music coming out. You can't say, there's not really a time when there's been a lot going on, because it hasn't stopped. He's completely right about that. I think the difference is how many regular people, not musicians, are coming out.
yeah,
Because there's a big difference to playing for a room full of musicians and a room full of people that are just awestruck by musicians.
yeah,
I think in the 90s there was more of that total fear of missing out, but it was only because there were so many nationals. There were a handful of people that were signed to national labels.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
So I guess right now there are so many that could be signed to a national label. It's just a function of there not being the vastness of national labels.
Yeah,
So maybe all people care about is someone who has that kind of a platform,
okay.
like is an A&R rep for Capitol or something like that,
Yeah,
saying, these people are hot. Maybe that's what normies need to
Yeah.
be like, I got to make sure I get out and see that.
okay.
So maybe we're just missing that. Who's the Johnny Carson of right now aside from Joe
Yeah.
Rogan? Like,
Yeah,
there needs to be more of that so that they can point out and be like, that's incredible, that's incredible. Maybe then people will grow out.
yeah. Do you think nowadays labels or like, I guess like management companies, all that, like they expect people to have an audience now versus before people would find like people like talent scouts. They would
Yeah.
find people.
From what I've read, and I don't have a lot of time, but I do
Yeah.
as much reading as I can from people like Ari Herstad, who does Ari's Take and is really dialed in on the industry and how things are moving and what's working. I will read some of that stuff, and what it sounds like now is, if you don't have anywhere from 150,000 to 1 million total followers across at most 2 or 3 social places. Like you have to have a very, very big
Okay.
constant presence on one of them. Materials, you know, a CD, released media, videos, all of that stuff. If you're doing all of that, if it's already been produced, you have a much higher chance that they're going to say, okay, so I see what you're doing, I see what you have. Let's take that and fan it using this model that we have. Like what you need to do is get famous overnight. The big labels are still they're the only ones who can do that. They're extremely competent. You know, that's their work, that's their bread and butter. So if you already have the total package and all they need to do is repeat ad nauseum on all of it's not called Clear Channel anymore, but all of the radio stations, all of the podcasts that are under their management, all of the different avenues, being Good Morning America in every single syndicated city and like all of that, they can have their people say your name 3 times a day over a week. And then when you play that area, you're going to sell out an arena. They have the model, they have the formula. So if you need to get big overnight, like say you just won America's Got Talent or something, or you just had a really big moment, you can capitalize on it. Yeah, if one of those giants comes to you and says, do you want to go for a ride? If that's what you want to do, they're going to make you famous overnight. And that's what you need, because that's, you know, you've got a little heat right now, turn it into a raging fire, you may as well.
Okay.
So yeah, they still serve a function there, but if you're looking to launch a career and you don't really have any followers, but you've got a plucky spirit and you're really good at writing and you know, you're not going to budge off of your artistic integrity and all of that. Like they have no interest in you whatsoever. You don't represent anything big to them. But if you put a thing on Instagram and it gets shared 6 million times, and the second thing you put up gets shared 8 million times, you're almost there. All you have to do is put out a third one. If it gets shared 9 million times, now you've got a trajectory.
Okay.
It's like, now I'm building, and all I need you to do is fan. And again, they're really good at that. But at that point, like Tom York said, don't sign to any label. You don't need them. Keep doing what you're doing. Distribute on your own. So I think that was a big part of it.
Yeah.
Here they are. Without these folks, taking Seacoast Entertainer to the next levels wouldn't be happening. Not to this scale. Tangram 3DS actively supports our music and arts scene and has proudly been part of it for the last 20 years. Their creative pros bring vision to life with everything from 3D renderings and VR to video, animation, web design, and branding. As a team of artists living and working on the Seacoast, Tangram considers a thriving local culture essential to us all for the connections we make, communities we build, and creativity we foster. Visit Tangram3ds.com to learn more, see their work, and imagine what they can do for you.
Kind of going back to something you said before about like gatekeepers in like the Portsmouth area. Like, what would your advice be for people who even like are just getting their foot in the door, I guess, like in any local place that they might be having like trouble like having people like reach out back to them, like about like recording or like even just playing somewhere to get their foot in the door?
Well, those are 2 different things. I'll comment on one and then the next.
Okay.
Recording, if you're having trouble getting, like, say, a studio to call you back, unless you know of a number of projects from that studio and you really are just obsessed with not the sound of the band, but a specific way of engineering that you're hearing, and you like the way that it sounds, and you want that engineer, keep calling.
Okay.
Go there, say hi, and like they're in business and they want to make money. So if they have any time in their schedule, they'll sell it to you. All you have to have is money.
Okay.
I don't think any of them are going to just do it for free.
Yeah.
But they're a business that makes money off of you wanting to record your stuff. So if they're not getting back to you, keep trying.
Okay.
I would hope they have enough business sense to at least
Yeah.
respond and be a good person, you know, because
Yeah,
that's just
yeah.
kind of basic courtesy.
Yeah.
If someone reaches out to you and says, I like your business and what you're doing, I'd
Yeah.
like to engage in business. If you are the type of person who doesn't respond to people,
Yeah.
you are either so good, you don't have to advertise, and every single time you sit down in front of your table, someone's throwing cash at you. If
Okay.
you're not that, you're going out of business soon. Like you have,
Okay.
how could you possibly in a small area run a business where you don't
Yeah.
respond to your potential clients?
Yeah.
So keep trying. It's
Yeah.
you'll get somebody on the phone, and if you
Uh-huh.
can't, find somebody else.
Okay.
There aren't tons of studios around anymore. Losing the noise floor
Yeah.
was a giant blow.
Yeah.
But you can still get into the Electric Cave. Mark is a great guy,
Okay.
you know, Mark McElroy. And that room is epic. It's one of few original installed by Neve himself, Neve boards in the US. I think there's like 3 on the East Coast.
Yeah.
And that's an incredible place to record sound. So if somebody isn't getting response, stop into Gary's Guitars and say, hi,
Okay.
is Mark here? Like,
Okay.
but he's a great dude, wildly talented, plays everything
Yeah.
that I think could be considered an instrument,
Okay.
and is wildly perceptive in terms of like producing. Like that, you know, what would sound really good there as a glockenspiel. Hear me out,
Okay.
play one, and then let you listen to it, and
Okay.
then make it go away if you don't like it.
Okay.
But there's plenty of people like that.
Yeah.
So keep trying. Ask somebody like me, I guess, would be the other thing that you could do. Find somebody that knows a lot of the people who do recording,
Yeah.
and like a teacher, sometimes people fit and sometimes people don't fit. So you got to find the person that you fit really well with. And if you kind of give an idea, a vibe that you like,
Yeah.
someone who has been around the people that are doing the recording a long while might know really well which person to send you to. Like,
Yeah.
you should be with Brian Combs at Rocking Horse, or you
Okay.
should be with Chris Magruder at Thundering Sky. Like, you should be
Uh-huh.
talking to this person.
Okay.
And then when it kind of happens that way, you're again more likely to get. But it means you have to go out and mingle and find someone like
Yeah.
me. Like you found me at an open mic.
Yeah.
I try and, no matter how many people I'm
Yeah.
playing with, I always go to open mics for
Yeah.
that reason. Everybody should.
Yeah, exactly.
As far as getting into clubs, bars,
Like opening for people, let's say like somebody who wants to get started with
okay,
opening for someone or something like that.
that's a tricky one.
Yeah.
So if we're talking about like local musicians,
Uh-huh.
every person that follows them is either a friend or a family member, or that musician has played a bunch of times and now has a small following of people who are not family or friend, but just love the music. Every single one of them is hard earned.
Okay.
So when someone says, hey, can I open for you? What you're inadvertently saying is, can I take some of what you've done and have it,
Okay.
please? Because that is a lot of work that they've put
Yeah.
in. And nobody is mistaken in knowing
Yeah.
why someone wants to open up for
Okay.
you. And if you are trying to get in front of their crowd,
Yeah.
most of the time they're going to be pretty protective of that crowd,
Okay.
and they want to make sure that they respect their crowd.
Okay.
Any musician or group that doesn't respect their crowd doesn't have one for very long. So the idea, tying back to comedy, there are types of comedians who think that it's best to bring an opener that's not very good because it makes them look great.
Yeah, I've heard of that. Yeah, yeah.
That is so dumb. It's so misguided, and
Yeah.
it's so like you're really never going to achieve greatness because You're just never going to get there.
Yeah.
You have to give, if somebody is going to, let's face it, everybody is working their absolute ass off. When I say everyone, I mean 99.8% of people.
Yeah.
Sure, you've got some finance bros here and there. Sure, you've got some people who inherited money.
Nepo babies.
Sure, you've got the nepos, you got people who just have somehow inexplicably a bunch of money.
Yeah.
But most people are working their absolute asses off,
Yeah.
and they're just getting by.
Uh-huh.
If they're going to give you a night, if they have kids and they're going to get a babysitter,
Yeah.
if they're going to take $80 to $120 of their disposable income, like we have this much per month to play with, we're going to
Yeah.
take a quarter of it and go out to a show, get dinner, get some drinks. You need to make sure that that night is one of the best nights of their lives because you owe it to them. They could have stayed at home and watched Disney Plus or Netflix, smoking weed on the couch, eating ice cream, and just not dealing with crowds. They decided to get off the couch, get out of pajamas, do their hair,
Yeah.
get a babysitter, spend some of their money. You owe them the best opener you can possibly give them. You owe them a show that does not last 5 hours, where people are like figuring out how to rearrange the stage and efficiency, quickness, up and down. So the show has to be, from my perspective anyway, so it's someone who puts together and throws shows, you have to know the show that you're going to put on, how it works, why it works, and where. And that when you invite people to see it, it's going to go off without a hitch. And they're going to be compelled. They're going to love every bit of it. And then you thank them and send them the hell home.
Yeah.
Thank you, bye.
Okay.
So you have to kind of also let the venue that you're doing this at, to tie back around, know this is what we're doing, these are the expectations. If you expect me to throw a show here and keep everybody literally right up to last call, well, that tells me either I'm not going to throw a show there,
Okay.
or I need to know the type of show that I'm throwing there and the type of people that I'm trying to bring there. Since the pandemic, anyone over 40, basically, you're not getting them out past 11,
Yeah.
11:30 at night. They're just like,
Okay.
oh, I don't have to be out here? Yeah, I'm not coming. I'm not coming. Who would you bring? Like
Yeah.
the show, this may be like a mental exercise,
Yeah.
but I don't want to I don't have all the answers.
Yeah,
I'm just barely intelligent enough to keep my own thing going and
Yeah.
be useful and contribute
Yeah.
in ways that I think might be meaningful to or help others.
Yeah.
You have a completely different vantage point from me.
Okay.
So using notions that are similar only, how would you use what I'm describing to make a show that would be interesting or appealing
Yeah.
to people that you want to reach? What would you, like before we got going, we were talking about
Yeah.
the model that works best in Boston right now and has since like maybe 2013 or 14 is
Yeah.
building a show that has 5 wholly different bands, completely different sounds, genres on the opposite sides of the moon. You're trying to reach people as an
Yeah.
artist.
Uh-huh.
How would you package a total show? I think is a good mental exercise to have.
Yeah.
Because it's using the same thing that I do, which is
Yeah.
exactly that. What kind of a total show product am I going to put together? That's the next step.
Okay.
Past opening for somebody.
Yeah.
Rather than open for somebody, coordinate a show
Yeah.
that you believe will be interesting to the people that I would bring to the show.
Yeah, yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. So what was your question? Sorry.
What would you
Yeah.
throw? You know, because if
Yeah.
you're looking at you getting on to my show, say, for instance, I'm building a show and you're like, hey, I want to open for you. Because that's what
Yeah.
opening is. So if anybody
Yeah.
else in the room also,
Yeah.
not just you, but
Yeah.
say somebody else in the room or that's listening right now
Yeah.
wants to open up for me
Uh-huh.
in playing in a band, they would become a part of that show.
Yeah.
They're not just looking for an exchange. They're not just looking for me to give them something, right?
Yeah.
If you're looking for me to just give you something, like here, get on stage in front of all my people and impress them. It's not really sharing, it's charity work.
Uh-huh.
If you believe that you have something that these people want to see, you believe that you deserve a spot on that show,
Okay.
which makes you an actual part of that show.
Well, I meant more when I said the opening act, like we talked about before, how there's some venues where they'll have like 4 completely different acts.
Yeah.
So I think, I guess kind of to answer your question, more recently I've tried to focus my attention more on venues like that, where it's more of like, I guess like a diverse show where they have different types of acts versus wanting everybody to like sound the same. I know there's some like places, not all of them are like that obviously, but there's a few like bars, I think like in every town or city, where they just want people to play covers and not really wanting people to shift from that. So I think like focusing on like places that are accepting of like not just original music, but like what you have to say as a songwriter is important, not having to mask that side of yourself just to get played. Because I think something that's important for songwriters to think about is that you want your voice to be heard, not just like become whatever people tell you to be, because then that
Yeah.
takes away like your own story that you could be sharing with the world.
Yeah, you're not an artist at that point. If you're making
Yeah.
something because the crowd is telling you that's what we want to hear, what you're doing
Yeah.
is you're making a product. Mm-hmm. The market's telling you
Yeah.
what to make, and you're making it and selling it to them.
Yeah.
That's not art. You're doing a thing that other artists do. So yeah, you're using the same tools. You're using words, lining them up. You're using melody. You're playing an
Yeah.
instrument, a guitar, a drum set, like things that are identifiable.
Yeah.
They've got a good beat. It's got a funky beat, and I can bug out to it.
Yeah.
You know, like tap along. And but if you're doing what they're telling you they want,
Yeah.
that's a product.
Exactly.
Big difference between someone who's making a thing that sounds like 100 other bands, 1,000 other bands, even just within one genre, and
Yeah.
making something that is very unique and standalone. Now, if you're making, so what I'm asking is,
Yeah.
if you are going to take a step, even if it's just intellectual exercise, take a step beyond, I want to open up for this band.
Yeah.
What would be the show that you would create that you would put yourself in? If you make a show that's compelling and you put yourself in it, and then approach someone else and say, I have this idea for a show, I think your band could be really cool in it.
Okay.
If they like the idea, rather than opening for them, they're bringing
Yeah.
their people and their what they do to you, and now all you have to have is a place to do it.
Okay.
That makes sense? This may be
Yeah.
like a back end kind of hack, like
Yeah.
a way to figure out how to not only get a slot,
Yeah.
but be on the same level with the band that you want to perform with.
Yeah.
You know, because now you're the person throwing the show. And if you have a great show idea
Yeah.
and the right bands and musicians to do it,
Yeah.
and you have a place in mind, even if the place that's your first pick doesn't call back, say the press room doesn't get back to you,
Okay.
don't worry about it. They're slammed. Be undeniable. Do what you do and do it very well. Don't not do it because somebody won't give you the space.
Yeah.
You know?
I think that's something that has come up a lot, which is why I asked that with other songwriters. Even people who have like moved to the area, a common thing that I've heard people say when I've recommended like, oh, you should check out this open mic, is that a lot of people who are newer have commented that sometimes they will go like brand new at an open mic, but depending where it is, sometimes there can be, I guess, like a cliquey side to things.
It's everywhere.
Yeah, so I think that's that's something that's come up a lot, which I think is interesting, is
It is interesting.
like people having a hard time fitting in when they're new somewhere. Like an interesting aspect to
It
being
makes
a performer, yeah.
Yeah, it makes me wonder where they're
Yeah.
going, because there are a
Yeah.
few that I can think of where, I mean, you're going to get a
Yeah.
little bit of clickiness everywhere,
Yeah.
but the seacoast of New Hampshire,
Yeah.
very, very few instances that I can think of
Yeah.
are clicky to the point where if you're new, you can't meet people.
Okay.
If you can meet people and you can talk to people and you're friendly,
Yeah.
you're going to do fine here.
Yeah.
If you go to a place, sing a couple of songs, and expect everyone to come over to you and be like, "You're amazing. Can I be your friend?" Like,
Yeah.
you're a delusional person. That's not the
Yeah.
way anything works ever.
Yeah.
So if you're hearing that, it makes me wonder how open and receptive the person is.
Yeah.
Because I didn't, I saw you at an open mic.
Yeah.
I saw you perform. I didn't like put myself in your purview, but I did say, I liked what you did there. That was really cool.
Yeah.
And then left you alone.
Yeah, I think it's coming more from a place of, like, if somebody's new to an open mic, I think we've talked about, like, before how, like, open mic should be open.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be just, like, a group of people just trying to push their friends. And I think that sometimes, like, when people are new, I think they've commented about certain things like that, that they have noticed that, like, it's not, I don't think there's anywhere right now that's specifically like that, but in the past there have been open mics where,
Oh, definitely. I can
you
think of a
know,
couple. I don't want
yeah.
to talk shade, but
yeah, me neither. But, like, it is that, like, unspoken rule of, like, oh, there's these certain people who are going to get pushed out more or, like, get priority more. And I think that sometimes with new people coming into the area, I think it's hard to, like, find your way how to fit in those
Yeah.
circles. Or
that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
I feel bad for somebody
Yeah.
if they did end up at one of those
Yeah.
ones that, I mean, I've been to some where
yeah,
I get there on time, I sign up,
yeah,
but I'm already the 17th person on the list.
exactly, yeah,
What?
yeah,
You just signed all of your friends up. Who's running this thing? And it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, them. And then they have this person switches from bass to guitar and vocals. The drummer's the same. The bass player switches
Yeah.
from second guitar to the, and they have like 5 or 6 different incarnations of the same
Yeah.
band, but they just call it different things because it's a different songwriter. And then their best friend
yeah,
signs up with himself and another couple of bands, but they have like the whole sign-up sheet basically filled out by the time sign-ups
yeah,
start. And I sat there with Ryan from
Yeah.
Hearst. We sat at this one, remain
nameless,
nameless.
yeah,
The place has since changed hands, and I don't believe even has an open mic right now.
yeah,
But the way that it was being run, it was like 11:30. It was almost midnight. And I
Yeah.
was like, hey, man, are we going to... Like, I don't want to be an ass about this,
Yeah.
but I asked you.
yeah.
I told you we were coming. I got here early, signed up. Like, what's the deal? We didn't end up even getting to play. And it was just because it was poorly run. You know, the part of the thing about an open mic is you have to say, if it's 15-minute slots, 15 minutes. If you take 10 minutes to get set up, you have 5 minutes. And that's if you literally drag your shit off stage immediately when you're done, because the next person has 15 minutes. If you let a handful of people go for like 20, 25 minutes, and then there are people that showed up and can't go, if I'm new to town and that's my first open mic experience, I'm probably not coming back out. That's horrible.
Yeah.
I have to work in the morning.
Yeah.
Seriously.
yeah,
I can't think of any that are like that right now. The ones that I
Yeah.
go to, the Earth Eagle North one, the Blue Mermaid,
Yeah.
Auspicious Brew, Stone Church Music Club, these places, you can become friends with anybody
yeah,
and everybody there. Like it's a very wide open,
Yeah.
embracing community. So yeah, if you hear that again,
yeah.
direct them to the right ones.
Okay, yeah,
Even Stripe 9,
Yeah.
I hear good things about. They're doing great stuff in Somersworth.
yeah,
Earth Eagle in Portsmouth, Tuesday nights.
Yeah.
They have a great one. We should have like a whole thing where we just talk about the different open mics, the nights
Yeah.
that they are, the
Yeah.
best way to get on and all of that stuff. So tie all the way back around.
yeah,
I suppose my advice for someone who wants to get on to a bill would be to show the person who you want to play with the same thing that you would show the label or management or whatever,
Okay.
that you are already doing it, that you will work just as hard, because can I open for you is sort of hidden code for I don't want to do the work that you've already done. Please
Yeah.
just give me your attention,
Okay.
which is not going to be forthcoming
Okay.
because most local bands have
Yeah.
worked their absolute asses off
Yeah.
to get what they have. So if you start throwing shows of your own
Yeah.
and giving other people opportunity
Yeah.
and do the work, that person that you want to play a show with is most likely going to ask you at
Okay.
some point, let's team up, let's do a
Yeah.
thing. But
That's interesting because, like, I hadn't thought of it that way before, because in the past I've always heard that, oh, if you're like a newer artist or like a solo artist, you have to like wait to have your own show, and that's why usually people recommend that you open for somebody else. But that's interesting how you like phrasing it that way, that's like somebody's, not just like a gig, but like a show they've prepared for,
yeah,
and thinking of it from that lens.
and it can help a lot.
Yeah.
It really can. I mean, so when Ryan and I started
Yeah.
doing show builds for Cursed, Justin is
Yeah.
the coolest. He goes along with most anything that Ryan and I come up with.
Uh-huh.
But what we were doing is we weren't getting calls back from a lot of places. We're weird. We make music that's not stereotypical. It's not stereo ready. It's very different.
Yeah.
So throwing us on in between a 90s cover band and a Green Day cover band
Yeah.
and being like, this is our thing, didn't work well. So we threw
Yeah.
shows at places that didn't usually throw shows.
Okay.
Our favorite place was Teetotaler.
Okay.
And we would just say, hey, can we have a night
Yeah.
where you open back up and we bring all of our friends and fans and
Yeah.
they buy tea and coffee and whatever from you. And Emmett was like, yeah, definitely.
Okay, cool.
Tell me when
Yeah.
you want to do that.
Yeah, no.
So, and that kind of goes along with the idea of taking a venue like the Stone Church or
Yeah.
Press Room, ask them for their worst night of the week.
Yeah.
Like, give me a Monday night, give me a Tuesday night or a
Yeah.
Wednesday or something. Some night that you can't bring people in here. Can I have that night? Unless they're real assholes and you don't want to work for them anyway, they'll give you a night. They'll
Yeah.
find some slow night, that,
Okay.
the night after UNH graduation or something, or right before UNH. Nobody's coming out, or everybody has left the college town.
Yeah.
We've played so many shows at places where all of the college kids are gone.
Yeah.
No, they know nobody's coming out. And when we
Yeah.
bring 40 people, they're like, okay, so those are all yours.
Okay.
We were going to be dead tonight. You impress somebody, and now you get a Saturday night whenever you want it.
That's smart.
Or you make yourself a variety show on a Wednesday night when nobody is coming out to this venue. And through going to open mics, you find people that you really think are great, and you make a flyer. And you
Yeah.
bring those people Wednesday night and tell them to bring all of their friends. If you do
Okay.
that like 3 months in a row and all of a sudden they've got a busy Wednesday night because the variety show is picked up and all of that,
Yeah.
you can open up for anyone you want. Like, you make a show.
Yeah.
It worked for us. I mean, we're not like superstars or famous, but I can get a
Okay.
show mostly wherever I want to get a show. But only because I've put together so many shows that worked. But I'm not asking anybody for anything.
Okay.
Is the big difference.
Yeah.
And I think like just committing to doing the work on your own. People who aren't afraid of doing the work on their own tend to see that in others
Yeah.
and know that they'll have a partner rather than a tag along. Nobody wants a tag along. Everyone wants a partner. Everyone wants someone who's
Yeah.
going to do the work also. So I think that would be to wrap it up, put a bow on it. That would be my advice: is do the work you want someone else to do for you. Show them that you'll do it. do it. By all means, do the thing, make the thing. What was the advice I used to give? Someone asked me how if you can't get a show at a venue, what do you do? And I said, throw a show at your house, invite all of your friends, take video of it, have a great time, and then bring that video to a place and say, I've run out of room at my house. Can I throw this show here so that all of my friends have more room?
Okay.
Just rephrasing
Yeah.
it like that. You're not really asking the club for anything. You're saying, I'd like to bring all of my people here. Is that okay? And they're going to be like, yes, yes, obviously,
Yeah.
okay. So kind of phrasing it in that way, saying, I need a place to bring all of my friends to. I've run out of space.
Yeah.
You're definitely going to get a show. But
But
do not do that if you're lying. Don't ever lie. Ever,
Yeah.
ever, ever. If you do somehow get one by a booking person,
Yeah.
it won't happen a second time. And you'll most likely burn yourself at like 15 different places because they do all talk.
Yeah.
Definitely don't lie. But, you know, I mean, if the idea is to get a lot of people interacting with music, bring in as many different voices as you can and have as many different people a part of it as you can.
Yeah. But the variety idea is pretty good. That I feel like it'd be cool to have something like that where it's not just an open mic, but like I guess like maybe a group of songwriters that I know like in Boston, Nashville, they'll have like songwriter circles or songwriter in the round. Where instead of just having like one solo artist, you get like four. Should we pause?
It's happening.
Uh-oh.
Is that a fire alarm?
Can we edit this out? Okay. Unless you want to keep it in.
I think it's a hilarious addition to the podcast.
This could be good, like, for, like, if you post something on Reels, like a clip for a preview.
Hi everyone, Sean with Seacoast Entertainer. I hope you're already enjoying one of the greatest communities in the world and in the homes of that community on social media, like Seacoast Music Scene groups of New Hampshire, Maine, and Massachusetts, and the fastest growing new group, Lakes Region Music Scene, all on Facebook, and at Seacoast Entertainer on IG, as well as Seacoast_Tainer on X. That's in addition to the shows we've been hosting or sponsoring around the region, like Jam of Legends, Writers in the Round, and these podcasts you're listening to now. And this is only the beginning. We're growing, and it takes a lot of work behind the scenes. As anyone who has built a business or organization will tell you, it is effort. When it's entirely volunteer driven, it is devotion. Devotion, though, doesn't pay the bills. And building a world-class website comes with bills. Fortunately, we have a community leader who has stepped up to help as an in-kind sponsor to cover the vast development costs. We could use more. A website as robust and feature-rich as the one they're building us has a lot of services backing it up in order to give you the experience in following the arts you didn't realize you were missing. We'll need to cover the costs of these services. Things like a stream of content from your favorite local artists from the popular social sites, fed to one central location outside the confines of those services, and a calendar populated with schedules of upcoming events across the region. Certainly, not least, is real journalism will make a return to the Seacoast under the leadership of our editor-in-chief, Christopher Hislop. With this comes all of our favorite pieces like 5 Spot and Spotlight. One of my favorite undertakings in all of this is the Musicians Archive, a constantly expanding archive of the musicians and bands who have come before and those who are just getting their stage legs. We all know that we're standing on the shoulders of giants here, so we'll pay tribute to as many as we can identify. From the ultra-popular like Say Zuzu, Thanks to Gravity, The Press Project, and Fly Spinach Fly, to wildly impactful artists whose names you've never heard. When you hear me reading ad copy for businesses, know this: they're paying actual money to support our amazing way of life, engaging with this gift to humanity, the arts.
Okay, we're back after peril and harrowing experience. It was terrifying. The alarms in the building we're in were going off, but a much ado about nothing. Where were we? You were talking a little bit about singer-songwriter circles. There was one that we talked about before the podcast started, which was the one that Shoeless Troubadour Joel Glenn Wixon runs Thursday nights at the Rice Library. But I don't know many others. Do you?
Not in the Seacoast specifically. I know that like further out in Boston, sometimes they'll have them, or in other places around like the North Shore, Mass, where they'll get like a group of songwriters together and have like a show for like 1 or 2 hours, and then like each person goes around and performs one song, maybe talks a little bit about it at the beginning, and you could even have like one of them or like one of the people sitting down like announcing the
And
thing.
they make a show out of it.
Yeah, yeah. I ran one once. There was a place called the Whale's Jaw in Rockport, Mass. But I did one there once where it was me and I think 3 other songwriters, and then like we each went around and performed a song, and then maybe like talked a bit about each song in the beginning. So it was nice because, like, usually with like singer-songwriters, it's hard to get like a show, like especially if you're just starting out. So like having one with like a group of songwriters, it's not only like more of like a community aspect to it, but I think it's like a good way for people to like connect with others.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, yeah.
Totally. And you don't know of many around the Seacoast?
Not specifically in this area. I feel like it'd be cool to have one at the Stone Church or the Press Room. That I know in the pandemic, the Stone Church had like a solo acoustic night, especially during a time when they couldn't have like bands and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it'd be cool to get something together like that again.
Well, I say
Yeah.
this all the time. If you want something to be, make it, because you can't have it unless you make it. And people can't go to it and use it and celebrate it unless it's first made.
Yeah.
You can't get props for having doing something without first doing it. If there aren't any, and you know how it's supposed to be run, maybe is that a good sign that you start one?
Yeah, like I definitely like to. It's just about like getting a group of people who like will commit to a night like that. So definitely if like there's any songwriters out there who'd like to do something like that, there's a few places I have in mind. That I know there's a new space in the downtown New Market called the Mill Space. That's it. Sometimes they have shows there.
Yeah.
So it'd be cool to have a night of music either there, the Stone Church.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. Where can people get in touch with you if they're trying to reach out about this, or
Yeah,
find
yeah.
you in general? Like
Yeah,
where,
yeah.
where can you find your music, and where do you operate?
So if you look me up on Instagram, I believe it's Darien, and that's DARIEN .music. And I believe my Facebook page is Darien Castro Music, but you can reach out to me on there. I also try to attend like open mics in the area pretty regularly.
What are your favorites?
My favorites, let me think. That's hard. I think the Stone Church is like it was the first one I went to in the area, so that one's probably the most sentimental to me. So I would say that's one of my favorites, specifically in the Seacoast area. And then more recently, I've been liking the Blue Mermaid one. I think it's cool to have one in like Kittery. I don't think there has been like an open mic in Kittery in a while since they like stopped doing it.
Man, not yet.
Yeah.
Not that I can think of.
Yeah. Because there's more out in Portland, but like having like a place in between.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
Most of the places where you're going to find a lot of open mics have a populace.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of people in the area.
Yeah.
And one of the cool things that can lend to is multiple open mics on the same night, so you can get up and down 2, 3, 4 times. It's big in the comedy world. Like the idea you go to New York, LA, Boston, these places have 5, 6, 7 open mics that you can hit all within the same area. Austin, Texas is that now. That's like the comedy hub of the world now.
Oh.
But they have so many open mics so that if you are a beginning songwriter or you're just new to the area, you can go and hit 5 open mics in a night. The next night hit 2 or 3, the next night hit 4 or 5. Like by the end of the week, you've played in front of 1,000 people. You have, ideally, if you're personable, like at least 10 musicians from the area that are also kind of doing what you're doing that you can collaborate with, come up with show ideas, or
Yeah.
Ask, hey, do you want to do my singer-songwriter night? That would be a good thing for you if you were to do the singer-songwriter night, is poach the open mics. And by
Yeah.
poach, I mean use them as your like your minor leagues. Go and
Yeah.
find people that are intriguing or you think would be a good person to add to the night, and then just use that as your booking thing.
Yeah.
Aside from people reaching out to you, of course.
Yeah, exactly that. I think that when Book and Bar was gonna close, like I thought of doing one there, but then they shut down.
Ah, it's such a bummer,
Yeah.
that loss. My God, what a great place.
Yeah. But right now I feel like there is like a gap with that closing down and also the Preston stopping like their open mic. I think there is that gap in Portsmouth for like a good
Yeah,
open mic for people to
100%.
go to. Especially a place like Book and Bar that was like such a big community for a lot of people in the area.
Yeah,
Not just music, but for people to like have like what people call like a living room space
yeah,
for people just to like hang out like after school or after work.
yeah.
That
Oh, it meant a lot to
yeah.
a lot of people. Yeah, that what a blow losing that place.
Yeah.
Hashtag save our stages.
Yeah, for sure.
Man, what a great place. What a sore loss. But yeah, Portsmouth has a void, a big one. And I don't know why it's not. I'm going to get so much hate for this, but I say it all the time. Portsmouth is not the epicenter of the Seacoast arts and music community. They're just the loudest at proclaiming that they are. If you really want to know where all of the artists and musicians are, it's around Portsmouth. None of us can afford to live in Portsmouth. Portsmouth is a bunch of rich people selling each other their expensive houses. And then walking around being like, we're so cultured.
Yeah.
Wow, are you though?
Yeah.
How many shows, how many artists have you contributed to this week? Not
like
you.
in,
I'm sure you have
yeah, I get what
plenty,
you're
but
saying. Yeah.
ask your regular
Yeah.
person about town in Portsmouth.
That's true.
Maybe they kicked their interior designer a few, but I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
all of the artists scattered. They can't afford to be in the area.
Yeah.
But so if you were to do that night, I would suggest don't go to Portsmouth. Go
Okay.
somewhere outside. Make it easy to get to. Parking spaces, since COVID, parking spaces are like,
Crazy. Yeah.
you have to have one. For every
Yeah.
person that you want to bring, you have to have a parking spot for them
Yeah.
because people expect to just drive right there if there's any
Yeah.
encumbrance, if there's any difficulty. They're just going to stay home with Netflix.
Yeah. Exactly.
But yeah, if you're going to do one, I think it's needed. It would be great to do a show versus like the one that I mentioned that Joel does.
Yeah.
That's not a show. That's
Okay.
more of a collective
Okay.
where it's really he has some mind-blowing talent that he's friends with. And there are some new people that will come to it, but a lot of times, if you're new to the area and you want to meet some incredible musicians, go to Rice Library on Thursdays for
Okay.
Joel's singer-songwriter series. It's not a show, so you're not going to get like a whole bunch of followers, but you may add 2 or 3 outstanding singer-songwriters to the people that follow what you're doing,
Okay.
just because you will have met them, and they'll be like, what you're doing is awesome. I really like how
Yeah.
you did this. You'll get a lot of insightful stuff, but it's not a show. And I like your
Yeah.
idea. Turn it into a show.
Yeah.
Let people watch in. You know,
That I don't know if this type of show they would have there, but I heard there's a space in Kittery called the Dance Hall. And
There is.
there have been more recent like Seacoast acts that have performed there, so that maybe that's another place.
Eric Claxton
Yeah.
is the art director there.
Okay.
And he is an about-town musician. He plays with a lot of people, records with a lot of people. Outstanding musician. He and his brother Chris, both just a couple of the more wildly gifted. Not gifted. They've worked extremely hard for what they're able to do. I shouldn't say that. And I know that he does hire local acts. From my experience, he knows or has an idea what the mailing list for the dance hall, what they want to hear, what they want to see. So he's he's cautious in bringing in stuff that he believes they will already want to see, just so that they can sell tickets and make sure that they bring in the most number of people. So building a night there may not be the easiest thing.
Yeah.
Whereas, because they open when there's a need to open.
Oh,
It's not a
okay, got
bar.
it.
It's not a restaurant.
It's not like the Seacoast Rep where they're like open like every night that they have.
Seacoast Rep.
Yeah, I started doing theater before we talked about that. I used to do film, but I started out in the Seacoast area doing theater as a kid. So I know there's a few
interesting.
like venues for theater, like the Seacoast Rep.
Yeah.
There used to be the Letty Center in Epping. I don't think that's around anymore.
That
But-
was it Elliott, Maine?
Maybe Elliott or there was one in Epping.
Oh,
Maybe there's
there were
another one in
multiples
Elliott.
then. There was
Yeah.
one. I don't want to speak to it, but I know
Okay.
somebody got in trouble,
Okay, maybe that's a different one then.
and there was some overlap with the Seacoast Rep and or
Oh.
a troupe from the area,
Yeah.
and it was like a Rising Stars camp, like a kind of
Papa Camp or
maybe
something.
some kids were involved,
Yeah.
maybe, but there was somebody that was I don't want to say full on Harvey Weinsteining, but there was some really
Oh, my.
weird, troubling stuff.
Oh my.
I don't know any
I didn't know
details
about
about
that.
it, but I know there is some disgraced theater
Okay.
thing that is no more
Yeah.
in the area, and it was a very well-known one.
Okay.
So I don't want to get specific without
Yeah,
any
yeah.
details, but I do know that there were some people that scattered, and there
Yeah.
were some people that were like, "What happened to that?"
Yeah.
I don't know.
I
but-
don't think that's the same place I'm thinking about, but it's interesting you mentioned that I think one of the reasons I ended up shifting away from theater is that I think because in that kind of like culture of the theater world, sometimes in smaller circles especially, there tends to be kind of, I mean, you'll get like a cliquey vibe anywhere, but there's sometimes like more of a like competitive aspect to it where everybody's kind of driving towards like one role. And I think like that was one of the reasons I shifted away from theater is that like I wanted to have like my own voice and choice and not just have to like be like fighting to like fit into like whatever role like people wanted me to be. I think especially like back like before like 2020-ish, like I think it was different. Like if you were from like a different background, sometimes there'd be like more stereotypical roles and like less amounts of roles that you could get, like whether it was like theater or film, where I feel like now the conversation has shifted to the other end where people are complaining that there's too much diversity or whatever. But I think that's interesting that how that has changed over like the past few years. But
Yeah.
I think as like an artist that hasn't just done music and theater, I think it's been interesting watching that change in like the culture overall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think really when things went ultra
Yeah.
inclusive,
Yeah.
everything became so unrealistic that
Okay.
it became wholly unrelatable.
Okay.
And I think the point of entertainment,
Okay.
if you're trying to have any kind of relevance rather than just like fluff, if it's just
Okay.
fluff and you're doing Family Double Dare, like knock yourself out. They're all fill it with as many different types of people as possible.
Uh-huh.
If you're trying to relate to convey a message or to get an idea explored that hadn't been explored or that needs to
Okay.
be freshly explored,
Mm-hmm.
you can't approach a movie like American History X and say, you have too many white people in this movie. Because like that was kind of the idea. It's heavy on that so that the people that are in that world can see a representation of the world that we're describing in this idea. And as we, meaning the filmmaker, that the filmmaker is
Okay.
trying to put you, the viewer, in a set and setting
Yeah.
it can't be like the most diverse setting. If you're talking about somewhere that is like 99% white and they happen to be extremely racist with all kinds of violence and all that, you have to put people into the setting.
Okay.
Make it like identifiable first and foremost, which means you're likely to be casting about 99% white people. But hold on, what we're about to do is show how unbelievably narrow-minded, fearful, and therefore violent these little closed-off communities can become.
Yeah.
But you don't do that by packing the screen full of because now you're not talking about a extremely densely white populated area. Like from a filmmaker perspective, you have to be able to put people into a place.
Well, I wasn't talking about like history per se, but like I think like I don't know. The Is it okay if we like could back up a little bit
You can do
to what
whatever
I
you
was
want.
talking about before? But yeah, I think like as a songwriter, you have like more of a choice of like what you want to say, especially like I felt like sometimes like with theater or like smaller theater circles, it's just like a different type of, I guess, like culture where like you're like a lot of people are competing for like one role. I think it's different than like when you have your own story to tell. And I think it just depends on like the type of person you are. Like some people might be the opposite where they won't want to perform on their own without a character. Versus for me, I felt like I fit in better, like, or I felt more myself through like performing through music. And I guess that's how I winded up down that road more.
Is your love split between, and you just don't feel like you've found a home within the theater community, or is it more that you have something to say and therefore should be the one who's making the roles and filling them the way that you want them filled?
I think I wanted the choice of like what type of role I wanted to fill. That like before it felt like if a lot of the roles available for like let's say usually like with a casting it'll say like specifically what they're looking for in a character. Where like at the time I was growing up and doing theater and that sort of thing, sometimes there would be like less roles available, and the roles that were available for people who might look like me were like more stereotypical. So I don't think it's like necessarily like a history thing, but more that like at the time there wasn't like as much perspective about like what's a stereotype and what's like a realistic way to portray someone. Yeah.
I wonder if that comes down to the story that's being told.
Yeah. I think it's also in the writing.
Yeah. I mean, the writing should dictate who you
Yeah.
have there, right?
Yeah.
Ideally.
Yeah.
So like what I was saying with American History X,
Yeah.
that specific piece of writing
Yeah.
deserves a specific type of cast. Whereas a piece of writing like, to use an animated, I absolutely love the film Coco.
Yeah.
You're not going to find many white people in it, nor should you.
Yeah.
That entire heritage and background can be told without any white people.
Yeah.
And that's perfectly fine because that makes tons of roles.
Yeah.
I hate so much things, I'll call it IP, any intellectual property being taken and then just redone, but like change the genders and change the nationalities, like and just like totally sort of ghostbustering it a little bit.
Okay.
Like, or taking a superhero and making the superhero like a different thing now. Unless it's like a Spider-Man, which has a Spider-Verse and like so many different people are Spider. But like make a new story, make a new superhero, make a new character that people can identify with rather than rehashing or redoing old stuff. I think that's what annoys people. This is a thing that I already liked. Like just because you're not very creative and you want to use this thing that already has name brand recognition, don't do that. make your own compelling thing.
Yeah, but I don't think that's like what like when people are asking for things to be like more diverse, I don't think they're thinking about like a character that's already been made. Because if anything, I've heard people complain that it's kind of like a disservice if you just change a character for like that
Oh, I
point.
agree.
And I think it's almost like that like back in I guess like the 20 like around 2015, it wasn't like as common for people to be telling like specific stories about people from like I don't know, like different backgrounds. I don't think that was like as commonly like told at the time. So a lot of the roles that like were like shown for like people from different backgrounds were like more stereotypical where like I feel like right now there's like more of a wide variety of stories in general
Yeah.
that even I guess like even with like storytelling in general, I feel like now people are like more open to tell like their own authentic stories where like I think in the past people have like maybe held back from like being completely honest.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I
I
think
think a lot of that has to do with what's
yeah.
going to sell.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, is the
Yeah.
machine drives so much of what actually gets made, and it's because people want their return. If the producers are going to put up this much money, they want to see their money back times some. And they got lazy. They go safe rather than, is this going to be compelling? They know they're going to get this many people if they use this. So
Yeah.
they take and they rehash rather than being daring, which is what artists are supposed to do, is be daring, do something new, do something different.
Okay.
And I agree with you. Yes, there are a lot more stories being told now, and I think that's fantastic. It's almost like they listened
Okay. Yeah.
when people complain, which doesn't usually happen. They usually just do whatever they want to do anyway.
Yeah.
But if you have something that is compelling and a unique story, whether you're telling it via song or making your own theatrical production,
Uh-huh.
I would encourage you, do it. Definitely do it.
Okay.
As many different things as you can possibly do with a
Okay.
unique voice, do it. Definitely. Like I'm in a box.
Okay.
I make a weird life to live because so many people have lived the life that I grew up in.
Yeah.
You know, like there's nothing new about it. Basically, Van Wilder. Like, how many different ways can you tell the story of what's that Rodney Dangerfield Back to School?
Yeah.
Like your typical middle-income white kid in suburban area. Like, oh, I went to high school. Oh, I kind of like music. Oh, I like going to hanging out with friends. Like,
Okay.
give me a unique storyline. Your parents are from Venezuela,
Okay.
right?
Uh-huh.
What is some way that you've interacted with the world that you don't think most people have either been exposed to or
Yeah.
can see themselves in your shoes?
I think so like I think there's more than one ways that like have affected how I like see the world around me and I don't mean that in like a bad way, but I think society is just like such a big thing of like how people are like formed or how your personality is formed that like having like two completely different societies that I was like essentially raised with like really like not just changing my perspective because I feel like that's hard to say when like you don't know like a life outside of that and likewise if you don't have immigrant parents like you're not going to know what that's like so it's not to like shame anybody I think it's just how like sometimes people are given challenges in life that like help you see the world different and like one way I try to see it is that like it helps me see things from different perspectives and I think that's why I gravitated towards storytelling from like a young age because I felt like it gave me kind of a lens to see things differently than like maybe somebody who didn't grow up with those experiences of having to like communicate with people from different cultures and societies and also like on your own trying to navigate like what do I want to take from like both of these sides of me and I think that's something that's always like an underlying theme in like my writing in general is kind of trying to navigate my way through like different obstacles. But like
Give me one.
I think that like there is like an underlying theme of like either obstacles or trying to like run away from challenges. And like in Succumb, which I did with Nevin, I kind of wrote about different, like each verse is kind of like a different obstacle that like the narrator, the singer is trying to talk about.
Yeah.
And they're trying to overcome it. But at the same time, there's like that line of like, I didn't want to succumb to you. So it's kind of like almost how, I don't want to say it's like an addiction, but almost like something you don't want to like fall victim to and how you want to like overcome those things. But I think it's interesting because depending how you look at it, you could see it as like somebody trying to like escapism or somebody trying to like heal or overcome something, which is why like the, I guess like the storytelling in that song specifically, because I don't think it's like about one specific thing as much as it is about like the character, the perspective of the person in that song. And I think sometimes it's like the special thing about writing songs like that is that sometimes people can like see themselves in them more because it's not just about like one specific story. It's more based on like a feeling.
Yeah.
That I think there's also a song called Runaway that I think I played it a few times at the Stone Church with Nevin also.
Is
But
that recorded?
yeah, so I have like a live version of a set we did at the Stone Church on Bandcamp. And that one, I kind of, so that one's interesting because it is about me, but I also used, there was a book I was reading at the time when I was 19 that it's about a ballerina who escapes her hometown and she goes with a company to perform internationally. And there's a part of the book where somebody from like a group from her hometown, I don't know if it's the mother or somebody, tries to go after her and kind of like pull her back. So it's kind of about like somebody who's like escaped their hometown and is coming back, and instead of feeling like inferior to like the people who have like tried to put them down, they're coming back from a place of like showing them who they are. And I think like if you look back at like the time I wrote it, I was just leaving high school and going into college. So it's interesting how like that song like kind of documents a point of my life where I was like, I wanted to go away from like New Hampshire when I went to college. And I went to Boston, I went to Rhode Island for 1 year. And it's interesting how like sometimes when I look back at older songs I've written, there is kind of like, so, like depending when I wrote them, they'll have like similar themes. And I think that's something that's really special about songwriting is that if you write from like an honest place, it can kind of document a point in your life.
Yeah. Yeah, they're great bookmarks. That's
Yeah,
for
that's
sure.
a good bookmark.
And I think all that you've described
Yeah.
is highly relatable, which is probably one of the things that makes you a compelling songwriter, is people can identify with what you're, and we'll play some of the songs in the podcast.
Okay.
We'll cut them in so that people know what we're referencing here.
Okay, cool.
But kind of what you're describing is you can never go home. Like Cursed on Earth has a song called Town of Ghosts even, that Ryan
Yeah.
wrote about it, and that's going back to the whole hometown, and like, it's a
Yeah.
town of ghosts. Like
Yeah.
some people have left, some people have died, some people have moved on. There are some people
Yeah.
that are still there, and they're just a shell of themselves or whatever. Like,
Exactly, yeah.
there's so many different
Yeah.
things that you can't predict, and it's not the same. You can't go back.
Yeah.
So they are still kind of living, but not. So they are sort of ghosts.
Yeah.
But writing kind of in that way, I think what you're doing is you're showing, because I asked what's very different about you, what's very unique, what's very
Okay.
culturally, what's something that I wouldn't possibly guess about your background, and you
Yeah.
described two different things that basically illustrate how we are all literally the same. We are
Yeah,
all
yeah.
very, very similar, and our
Yeah.
differences are so minor
Yeah.
that it blows my mind how people don't realize how divisive the people that run cultures or run governments
Yeah.
or run media apparati, like they use the same tiny little things to make everybody angry at each other so
Yeah.
that they don't realize they're all the same.
Yeah.
We all want the same stuff, and we all basically, to be able to work and pursue something that matters to you,
Yeah.
to make sure that your family is protected and has what they need, and to chase your dreams. Literally every person who's ever lived as a person,
Yeah.
except for sociopaths, want that.
Yeah.
Sociopaths want power, so they end up running things. And then they make us fight so that we don't try and remove
Yeah.
them from power, not realizing no well-adjusted person wants power.
Yeah.
So, but you described a couple of things that show we are all can identify with each other very, very well.
Yeah.
Not to press you, and if you don't want to
Yeah.
answer, please don't.
Okay.
But what is something that's very unique about your experience that might, well, I don't want to tell you why I'm asking, but something that's
Yeah.
just not your typical, something unique from your life, your upbringing,
Yeah.
your background, your interactions,
Yeah.
your views.
I don't think it's necessarily like one thing, but it's like a combination of different things.
Okay.
Because like kind of like you were saying that you don't have to have like the same background as like a songwriter in order to connect with their music. That's someone I can think about as kind of like a metaphor is, so this year there was a biopic that came out about Bob Marley, and I think one of the things that was interesting is that he is a person whose songs are not just universally known, but that a lot of people can connect to the idea of like
Yeah.
like love and like overcoming challenges and peace in his songs. But he had a really difficult upbringing. Like if you see the movie or if you watch the documentary, that I think like a line that stood out to me from like an interview I saw with the actors and Ziggy Marley is that for someone who was not given compassion in his like younger years, he gave like so much to the world. And I think that's something that like that I grew up with his music because my family's from northern like the top of South America, which pretty much borders the Caribbean.
Yeah.
And I think something that though is really beautiful about like his message is that kind of that idea that like, oh wow, somebody who went through so much difficulty in his life, because it wasn't just one thing. Like I'm not going to spoil it, but if you don't know the
I'm
story of the music,
big Bob Marley fan.
yeah, but he went through a lot in his life.
Did,
So
yep.
I feel like that's such a metaphor for any songwriter, like that if he could come from like such darkness and create such beauty, I feel like take what like has like been difficult for you in your life and use it as a way to communicate with others. Kind of how I said before that the song I wrote about like revisiting memories or places that no longer exist through the dream world.
Yeah.
That like people might not have lived the specific scenario that I lived, but they could connect with it because I think that I put into that song the like feeling that I felt when I was writing it. And so I think that that's what drives me as a songwriter is kind of telling stories that aren't just like specific to the sense that nobody else can see themselves in, but like writing from an emotion is really important for me. That before I was talking about how when I wrote Runaway and when I first started songwriting, it was more around the time I was 19 that I wrote my first song, I think, when I was 8 about a cat or something. But like it wasn't until I was 19 that I knew I wanted to do songwriting. And at the time, I think like mental health was like something I really enjoyed writing about. And even to this day, I still enjoy it. That I feel like that, like more so now, it's like more openly accepted. But I think before the pandemic and so, there wasn't as much music about that. And I think that's something that like pretty much anybody can relate to is mental wellness, because that is just like wellness in general.
So
Yeah.
the angle of specifically mental wellness
Yeah.
rather than mental problems.
Yeah.
Like, so it's just it's a different way of approaching a similar thing. It's maybe possibly a more healthy one. It could be argued because
Yeah.
there's been a lot of songwriting that's been done exploring difficulties and
Yeah.
mental problems, but
Yeah.
not necessarily from the standpoint of you have to look out for yourself or you have to
Yeah.
do work to unpack things that are haunting
Yeah.
you or hindering you, and like taking a proper healthy approach to it. You're
Yeah.
right, that there wasn't a lot of that. There wasn't any.
Yeah.
When I grew up, I'm drastically older than you.
Yeah.
When I grew up, I was raised by people that, well, I don't want to say anything bad about my parents. They're incredible people. But like my father specifically, he was raised by people who don't talk about their feelings. You
Yeah.
shut up. Your feelings don't matter. If there's a problem that you have, work harder. Like,
Yeah.
if you're sad, keep it to yourself. Don't make everyone else sad.
Yeah.
Whereas like it became a different kind of approach, and it was like, well, what's making you sad? Let's explore your feelings. That all
Yeah.
started well into the 90s. Prior to that, it was like you need to push it down deep.
Yeah.
Don't cry. You show your weakness when you cry, like that
Yeah.
kind of thing. And you're right. It probably 2014, 15 on, it really started
Yeah.
taking a different. Let's unpack this.
Yeah.
My curiosity is in some recent studies that talk about how potentially unwell it is to fixate so much on things that you very well may just grow out of or conquer in time. But I think what a lot of people are doing and they're finding is that people are over fixating on their problems rather than just acknowledging they have one and continuing to live. Because if you continue to live and recognize there's a thing here, if there's a thing that you can do to fix it or to assuage it,
Yeah.
keep living,
Yeah.
deal with it as it comes, don't deny it. But if you fixate on this thing, you become the thing that you're trying to fix.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
the discussion is, I've seen shifting just a little bit from
Yeah.
fixate on all of the things that you don't like about yourself to acknowledge that you have these things that
Yeah.
you'd like to work on, but continue developing yourself as a person and as you can pick
Exactly,
these
yeah.
things off, which I think is a much healthier way to go about it.
Yeah, I definitely feel that, like, one of the reasons that's something I gravitate more towards is that, like, more recently, like, there has been, like, more of an open conversation about, like you said, not just shoving everything in, but, like, being open enough for, like, self-aware that you may have, like, certain issues or you may have certain flaws, but how that's kind of, I guess, like, part of the human experience.
Yeah, we all have it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's the recognition that we all have our things.
Yeah.
And I think it's a lot healthier to say, you know, be kind because everybody is facing their own battle.
Yeah.
You don't know what it is or what's going on. Rather than saying everybody should be constantly talking about all of the battles that they're facing and all of the reasons why they're upset and why they're, because that leads to victim mentality so
Exactly.
quickly.
Yeah.
And it is just, it's the worst kind of plague because it just breeds extreme narcissism where everything is about you and your problems.
Yeah.
When really, if you're just living, odds are, if you surround yourself with good people and you're constantly helpful to other people, things that you haven't figured out a way to navigate may be a thing that somebody else has, and they help you through something in a way that you would never have approached it. Just by continuing to live and being open. And I think that's the good takeaway about it, is everybody's just a bit more open about who they are, what they've faced, and the big message is keep going. Like, don't fixate. Keep going, and eventually, you know, everybody's timeline is different, but you will surround yourself if you intentionally live this way, if you surround yourself with good people,
Yeah.
people will be looking out for you
Yeah.
and will offer help.
Yeah.
Key is being receptive. Knowing your boundaries. Don't take everything that's offered to you, but you know, if someone has a good idea, consider it, take it, no matter where it's from.
Yeah. I think that's something interesting also as a performer. There is like also the part of it that obviously it just comes with it, but like I guess that people can sometimes see performers as, I don't know if like as an object, but like something they can project themselves onto.
Yeah.
Where like even in like if you're just performing at an open mic, sometimes there will be people who like I guess like tend to be a bit over judgmental, and I think that's something that's hard that people don't talk about enough as like a performer, like you said, like not fixating on like those negative things and trying to like analyze like oh, what's worth my attention and what's not,
Yeah.
because I think it's very easy, especially as a creative person, to like get in your head about those things
Yeah.
and not
That's
let
tough.
yeah
The modern way of looking at that is don't read the comments.
yeah
Like if you're in
Yeah.
if you're in an open mic and
Yeah.
somebody's sitting there being judgmental,
yeah
that's a comment on Twitter you don't want to read.
but how do you ignore it in real life?
Real life, it's a little tougher, but you have to have that skin that
Yeah.
allows you to just be like. I think the way to approach it, the way that
Yeah.
I've found that I approach it the best anyway. I can only speak from my own purview, but approaching it with compassion.
Yeah.
I like to look at everybody as a kid because everybody is basically a kid at a different age on this planet. There's no adults. That's the big secret. When you get into your 40s, you realize all of the 60-year-olds stop swearing when an 80-something-year-old walks in the room. There's no adults on this planet. It's just
Yeah.
various levels of kids. So if you see a person who's judging you, it's because they're very not happy with themselves. That's it. That's all it ever is. No
Yeah.
person who is very confident and happy and well-adjusted and peaceful and
Yeah.
encouraging, compassionate, they're never judgmental. There's a reason. It's because they want everybody to be happy and do well. If someone's being judgmental, if someone's cutting you down,
Yeah.
that's a grumpy. Oh God, what was the quote? I will not get it, but there's a quote that's something to the effect of jealousy or envy is the result of tragically unmet needs.
Oh wow, that's powerful.
So
That's true.
when you
Yeah.
walk with that,
Yeah.
anybody that is sorrowful or really just hard on other people around them, it's usually a cry for help. It's usually that
Yeah.
person is really lacking in something and
Yeah.
needs somebody to be compassionate towards them,
Yeah.
which is freaking hard to be because a lot of times they're very salty and sour and you don't want
Yeah.
to talk to them because they're just miserable.
Yeah.
But that's where the compassion comes in.
Yeah. Definitely.
Just oodle some
Yeah.
compassion is what's necessary.
Yeah. I guess it like comes down to navigating like what's criticism that like I could actually use, or what is like people trying to like turn me or my art into like what they see themselves reflected into, because I think that's one of the hard things, especially like if you're just starting out, you want to like improve and get better,
Yeah.
but sometimes like you have to draw that boundary of like what do I want to be, what type of artist do I want to be, and like what do I not want to be, in a sense that I think sometimes people talk about, that like it's just as important, whether it's relationships, your career, or whatever, like knowing what you don't want versus what you do. That I saw a video the other day of talking about like job interviews and how it's just as important to know what you don't want from like a work environment or any sort of environment versus like what you want.
Very much.
Yeah. But I guess that also ties into like people pleasing, of like knowing like not just having boundaries with other people, but with yourself, of like being honest with like who you really are versus trying to fit yourself into somebody else's mold.
Yeah. And to an extent with
Yeah.
employers, you have to play the game, I suppose. If they're paying you to do a thing and
Yeah.
not necessarily be yourself. A much healthier environment is one who encourages you to be yourself.
Yeah.
And, like, because there's so many different people and different types of people. If you're in business, I tend to believe you're looking for clientele. You're looking for people to pay you for whatever it is that you
That's
do,
right, yeah.
right? So if there are myriad types of people,
Yeah.
you would want the same reflected in the people who are selling or working for you. Because
Yeah.
the more others can identify with you or find your uniqueness endearing, the
Yeah.
more likely they are to engage with your company. It only makes
Yeah.
sense to be more diverse and whole when it comes to your approach to the masses, because the masses
Yeah.
are so different.
Yeah.
Sterile is just such a dated thing. Like,
Yeah.
it's so 50s, 60s.
Yeah.
It's gross. That and the 80s management style. Like,
Oh, no.
it's just so broken. It needs to go away completely.
Oh my. I wasn't alive in the 80s, so I wouldn't know.
The 80s is packed with raiders at the top
Yeah.
and middle managers who aren't that bright, but
Oh, no.
create little popularity contests and cliques within offices so that they can control and
Oh.
manipulate people. Like,
Fun.
it's such a horrible workplace.
Yeah.
Some big companies are still doing it just because it would mean retooling their entire workforce. Fortunately, those companies aren't going to last much longer, and the new wave of people who are adapting and managing, they're creating whole new styles of work.
Okay.
I'm outside of that whole sphere.
Yeah.
I mean, I work for myself, but I know how they were all built. I took classes in college on how to build and how to
Yeah.
manage and how to organize and all of that.
Okay.
So I kind of see them as tools and mechanisms rather than companies and workforces and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, it's, once you know how they're built and kind of the functions of all of the different things, you can see how they all get put together with just different colors and window dressings and stuff.
Yeah.
But some of the management styles are just very unique and stick out.
Yeah.
There's like, I think, 4 or maybe 5 primary management styles.
Mm-hmm.
The ones that do the best nowadays, I think, are ones that have the leader in the field with you, and they're just the best version of what they want everyone else to be, and they inspire and lead. Rather than being at the top being like, work harder. Like, that's just terrible.
Yeah.
All you can do is intimidate people.
Yeah.
It doesn't inspire anybody.
Yeah. I mean, in general, for anybody watching, you probably shouldn't have a relationship. Like, it doesn't have to be like work related, just like whether it's music, relationships, or anything. You probably shouldn't have like a relationship with somebody who's talking down to you like that.
No.
Yeah.
No, God, no.
Yeah.
Especially not on the outside of work.
Yeah.
If you get paid well and you're good at your job and they stay out of your hair,
Yeah.
except for being horribly maladjusted people,
Yeah.
you can kind of get by. But I would suggest, if that's the path you're going to live, have boundaries, and when you leave work, have something that really means something to you, that you put your heart and passion into, because your heart and passion is going to get stomped on at that workplace, and
Yeah.
they're not going to care about you at all.
Do you feel like you can relate to that in a sense of like not just work as a like your day job, but like as a musician? Do you feel you ever have to encounter
sure.
that stuff? Yeah.
Recently, I've poured most of my attention creatively into Cursed on Earth, which it's such an oddly perfect fit in the
Yeah.
way that Ryan and Justin write, and how open they are to me affecting what they've made.
Okay.
Like, they don't say the drums need to be like this, or you're way overplaying that, or you need to simplify it so that people can approach it a little bit more easily. Like, I have this deep drive to find unique ways of doing things or create new paths where there perceptually was no path.
Okay.
So I oftentimes come across weird. That's not good for pop music. So what I've
Okay.
done in the past is I've had a band that we wrote music that was very easy to approach. It was easy to play. You go out, everybody drinks, dances along, and has fun. That's the pop project. And then a really weird one where it's just almost unappreciable unless you're a musician and you know what I'm doing. You know what we're
Okay.
trying to accomplish, and it's avant-garde.
Yeah.
And then one that is simply for expanding yourself.
Yeah.
You know, where you really have to practice and develop rudiments and stuff. So I have always filled my own I don't know way to describe. I have lots of different things satisfied in the different approaches, but don't let them overlap.
Yeah.
Like if I tried to make Cursed on Earth pop music, it would certainly do it less justice than what I'm doing with it now.
Okay.
So if I wanted
makes
to get a
sense.
pop fixation out, I would do it outside of Cursed on Earth.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Okay. Yeah.
So like if I'm working at a company, I don't want to necessarily express my creativity if the role does not need my creativity whatsoever.
Okay.
Don't put it there if it doesn't belong there. By all means, do it, but elsewhere.
Okay.
Does that answer?
I think so.
Okay.
The
Check the tape.
Let me think. I think like the way I can relate to that is, I guess what we were talking about before of like not letting like certain comments get to you is like kind of having to have that side of you as like a performer, that you're not just a creative, but it's also like a job.
Yeah.
And like how like even like the biggest performers on earth, when they have like to go through something personal, they still have to like go out and perform. And I think that's something that like people don't realize is such an important part of performing, is I guess like growing thick skin and learning how to deal
Yeah.
with like, I guess not even just like in big industries, like if you were in New York or something like that, I think like wherever you are in the world, you're always going to have to deal with people who aren't necessarily like the nicest or the most polite. And I think that's also a good lesson for life, because I think in any job field you are going to have to deal with like stress or complications like
Yeah.
that.
Those never go away.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Wherever you go, there you are.
Yeah.
You know.
I think that's one of the biggest lies as a society that we're told, is that there's this kind of perception that like when you graduate high school that like all the mean people mature. At least like when I was growing up, that's, I feel like we were fed that a lot. And when you get older, you realize that the people who were like mean in high school, that's not just something that magically like they grow up and that goes
No.
away, but that's like a part of life.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Which I think is why that's something that's like really fascinating to me as a writer, is like what you were saying before, that like the world is just like different adults, or like kids just growing up as
Yeah.
adults.
Kids at different ages.
Yeah, there's kind of like that, like a joke on social media, like, oh, we need a more adultier adult. Like people who are now like entering their 30s, they realize like, oh, I'm not like as much as an adult as like I pictured when I was younger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the thing that we miss about that is that the adult role that people are looking for is someone who is selflessly giving to you, because that's what parents do.
Exactly. Yeah.
So people aren't necessarily looking for more adults. They're looking for parents because they want someone to take their responsibilities from them and do their
Yeah.
homework, because they're feeling or overwhelmed.
Yeah.
I think that's what we've run into.
Unfortunately.
So surrounding yourself with people that are selfless, that are always encouraging,
Yeah.
and are trying to get you to be the best version of yourself, unencumbered. I think that's important to surround yourself with.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean walk away from everybody who isn't. I think that was a thing that was a mistake that our culture made, which was, if someone isn't serving you, walk away. That's, again, a thing that makes you a narcissist. If somebody isn't giving you, walk away from them. Is that right? If they're horribly toxic and they're attacking you, by all
Yeah.
means get some distance and get walls up. But
Yeah.
that person's going to keep doing that no matter where they are. And if you have a connection to them and you might be able to help them evolve on your
Yeah.
terms, that makes you the selfless person. That makes you the adultier adult. That makes you the person who could
Yeah.
potentially feed them what they need every now and then so that they do come along and don't
Yeah.
just go off and ruin everyone else's life.
Yeah. And that's what's hard. I feel like right now we're getting to a point like in society where there is like a lot of like I guess like therapists speak online. That like it's
Yeah.
gotten to a point where like even people who are well intentioned, it's hard to draw the line of like who's like actually a narcissist or who's just trying to, I don't know, like they might have like other issues because I feel like not everybody who is like necessarily selfish is a narcissist per se.
Yeah,
That
totally.
sometimes that itself like can create narcissism is the idea of like blocking out people who like maybe they're going through certain things in life.
Yeah.
Like I saw something the other day that said that sometimes the idea of like blocking people out of your life just because they have like flaws, that in itself can breed narcissism. Like what you were saying of like I think that's something that needs to be talked about more, of like drawing the line of like when like obviously if somebody's like a dangerous person in your life, like cutting them out, but like trying to see other people's perspectives can also like give you more of a lens. So like I think sometimes like with toxic positivity, like just seeing things like in or like having vision of things that are 100% perfect, it can almost like isolate you from the world.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And it stops sharpening you.
Yeah, exactly.
You sharpen steel against stone,
Yeah.
you know, steel against steel. You don't
Yeah.
sharpen steel by running it through wool,
Yeah.
you know. Like if everything is too easy for you, you're either not putting yourself in a situation where you're trying anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Like I tell my piano teacher, every time I finish a piano lesson,
Yeah.
I feel so dumb and incompetent
Yeah.
and useless.
Uh-huh.
And I like that. If I felt like I had everything all figured out,
Yeah.
it means I'm not trying hard enough.
Yeah.
Because I don't have everything figured out. I don't even have a tenth of what could be figured out.
Yeah.
There's so much more to figure out. There's always more to figure out.
Yeah.
If you're just going through the motions,
Yeah.
you're certainly not an artist.
Yeah.
An artist is supposed to be digging.
Yeah.
An artist
true.
is supposed to be tackling difficult, hard,
Mm-hmm.
trying to make it so that not only do you as an artist evolve,
Mm-hmm.
but you show people what that evolution was and inspire them to find their own evolution.
Mm-hmm.
You don't really do that by showing somebody
Yeah.
a mirror of exactly what they're facing and how good you have it. That's the
That's
nature of
very-
most fundamental pop music.
Okay.
You know, like they feel better about themselves because, oh, you get what I'm going through. Yes, but did they offer you anything? Did they give you a path? Did they help drive you through to some kind of understanding or realization or inspire you to work on yourself? Or are you just satiated?
Okay.
If you're just satiated,
Yeah.
you were sold a product.
Yeah.
If you see something
yeah.
that compels you
Yeah.
and drives you towards
Yeah.
that mission of finding and sharpening,
Yeah.
that's good. That's some art.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's something that's important of like overcoming, I guess, like any insecurities that come with like creating like anything, especially like music or art related, is like not like being so hard on yourself that you don't allow yourself to grow.
Yeah.
That I think that's something I'm always trying to work on, is that like not getting so in my head that I don't allow myself to continue to like grow and develop, even as a human being. Like what we were talking about before with like mental wellness of like always trying to evolve and don't get so stuck into like being perfect. Like kind of what you said with the piano lessons, like if you just got stuck on the idea that you weren't as perfect as you wanted to be, you wouldn't continue. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like being honest with yourself of where you're at, but like also like being self-aware enough that like you can continue to work to
Have
evolve.
the
Yeah.
desire to.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be about like having like a perfect life or perfect talent or whatever, but it being like a journey of where you continue to evolve.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect life is boring.
Yeah.
So
Kind
I
of,
think it's a good place
yeah.
to stop.
yeah.
I could hang out and talk with you forever. And
Okay.
so one more time, how can people find your stuff?
Okay.
What are you going to be up to?
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't ask some of my favorite things to ask.
Okay.
So we'll just have to do this again sometime.
Okay.
But where can people find you? What's the
Okay.
easiest way? And
Yeah.
what is something that you are excited about that you're currently working on that people might follow you
Yeah.
through?
That right now well, first of all, I'll tell you how you can reach me, but my full name is Darien Castro, and that's Darien, like the town in Connecticut. But on Instagram, I'm Darien.music, and Facebook, Darien Castro Music, and you can find my music on Bandcamp, and I believe on like all the streaming services. I have Succumb, the song that I mentioned I worked
Yeah.
with Nevin. But yeah, if you want to reach out to me on there about doing a songwriter circle, that'd be cool. But also something I'm focused on right now is recording every night in my dreams that I have like a demo figured out already. I'm just trying to like go somewhere, like find musicians to record it so I can put it out. So yeah, that's
Awesome.
my main goal.
Finding the musicians to.
Or like a place to record.
Oh, so you're literally just looking for a place to record,
Yeah.
and maybe some musicians.
Yeah, like session musicians. Like
Oh,
I'd
I
pay,
can-
obviously.
Give you some ideas offline.
Oh, perfect.
Well, or I could just say literally right
Yeah.
now, the Electric Cave, I think would be a
Electric
great
Cave.
spot for you.
Okay.
Mark will really understand your sound
Okay.
and be respectful of the space that you leave in a lot of your music.
Okay. Cool. I couldn't find their website online, so I didn't know like how to get in contact with
Yeah,
them.
it's not. I don't think he makes it highly commercial.
Okay. Okay.
But the space is there, it's outfitted, and it's run by a master. So
Okay,
when the
cool.
right things come through,
Yeah.
and that's the Guy Capisolatro circle, which is
Okay.
just deep and rich with prolific songwriters and
Oh, okay.
really skilled players that
Mm.
understand nuance like in really incredible ways.
Okay.
So in terms of finding people,
Yeah.
if Mark can't provide the
Mm-hmm.
playing a little part that kind of helps this or
Yeah.
he will know so many people that he could suggest to you.
Mm.
So that would be a really good one.
Okay. Perfect.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's awesome talking to you, Darien.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks
you
for
very
having
much.
me.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
If anyone wants to contribute to what we're doing, at Seacoast Entertainer on Venmo, paypal.me/Seacoast Entertainer, I believe that's what it is. You can always find the conversation ongoing on Facebook at Seacoast Music Scene. There's a New Hampshire group, a Mass group, a Maine group, and Lakes Region Music Scene. The website is coming along very quickly. By the time you see this, we'll be very close to a launch, and that is seacoastentertainer.org. Sign up for the mailing list, find out all that's going on and all that's coming at you. We have a lot of podcasts to record. I'm glad you got
Yeah.
to get in this one early.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, see you guys out there.
Cool. Bye.
Here they are. Without these folks, taking Seacoast Entertainer to the next levels wouldn't be happening, not to this scale. Tangram 3DS actively supports our music and arts scene and has proudly been part of it for the last 20 years. Their creative pros bring vision to life with everything from 3D renderings and VR to video, animation, web design, and branding. As a team of artists living and working on the Seacoast, Tangram considers a thriving local culture essential to us all for the connections we make, communities we build, and creativity we foster. Visit tangram3ds.com to learn more, see their work, and imagine what they can do for you.